So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this webinar organized jointly by Innofor in Finland and CoC in Sweden. We are the first two accredited group certifiers of the Association for Ecological Forestry Certification, and the theme today is how to obtain AFC certified timber, which is trademarked under EverCover. So the AFC does not wish to market a letter series of acronyms, but instead has adopted a trademark name for its timber, EverCover, and the actual certification organization behind EverCover is the AEFC, the Association for Ecological Forestry Certification. I'm Marcus Walsh. I'm the Senior Partner and Chairman of Innofor Finland, and I'm delighted to be joined today by the Head of Marketing and Partner from CoC, Johan Berhin, who will speak after me from Stockholm in Sweden. And on the slide today, first slide, you can see the program. So during the next hour and a quarter, we'll be going through aspects of obtaining EverCover, what it entails in terms of chain of custody requirements, and then some marketing issues from Johan, specifically why EverCover is a unique product and in many regards the solution you company might well be waiting for in terms of sustainability in timber. I would first of all ask everyone else to please shut off your microphones and your cameras so that the presentations themselves are not disturbed. And you are free to send in questions about my presentation, the first presentation during the course of it in the chat. My assistant here in the room will be gathering those questions up for me to look at while Johan is presenting his presentation, and during Johan's presentation you can be sending in questions about his points, and he will then, as will I, at the end of the presentations, we will then answer as many of these questions as we have time for, and then answer in writing on Innofor's and CoC's website those that we may not have time to answer. But we have left a good quarter hour for questions and answers at the end, so that we, for once, have time to also go into audience issues, listeners' issues at the end of the webinar. As I say, please now shut off your cameras and your mics, and if you have any questions, please address them in the chat, which you are free to use at any time. So just a few words about Innofor Finland itself. It's established in 2007. We're continuous cover forestry specialists and offer a wide range of forest-related services, and we are part of the pioneer group developing the new continuous cover forestry based certification, Association for Ecological Forestry Certification, which is based on continuous cover forestry to a large extent. And a few words about the AFC itself and its background. In a nutshell, these two pictures tell a big story. So an AFC certified forest producing EverCover timber looks like the larger picture, and the current business usual across much of the boreal zone of the world is the smaller picture. And you don't have to be a big sustainability expert to instinctively understand the enormous difference in terms of biodiversity management, in terms of climate, carbon sequestration in forests, and also in terms of human social interactions, human mental health, and society's well-being, that transitioning from a clear-cut based rotation forestry system to a continuous cover forestry based system can have. And although the research behind continuous cover forestry success is not the topic today, before I go into EverCover timber issues in more detail, just a couple of words about the background to the AFC's progress and project to kind of make sure that we're all on a level playing field. And so the fundamental question, of course, is why we need a new certification system at all. And the answer is that because current certification systems aren't working. The short answer. And why it's not working is simply based on evidence that we all know and see. Biodiversity loss has not been reversed, even in regions with a high percentage of certified forests over many decades. In several countries, including Finland, forests are actually turning into a carbon source, not a sink. This is also the news from the latest COP, Conference of the Parties meeting in Brazil. So this is not just a Nordic problem. Ditching is turning rivers and lakes and bays turbid. The waters are no longer clear, and as a result, we are losing a lot of species that can no longer survive in non-clear waters. Many current certification systems allow for unlimited clear cutting, or if they don't allow clear cutting, they require virtually no forest protection. And these are both critical limiting factors for biodiversity. Many of the auditing processes have been heavily criticized as being too lax, especially with regard to field checks. And I would personally argue from experience that the timber sector is now falling into disrepute as countries, as nations drift further and further away from our Paris Climate Agreement targets. Biodiversity continues to decline in forests. The whole morale of the timber sector is falling, and this is, in the longer term, risking jobs and the future of the entire industry. So a lot of people now feel that it's time to put certification on a firm scientific footing, one that carries credibility and is at the same time, of course, workable and not excessively bureaucratic. And the other issue then, of course, is that it's easy to criticize, but what is successful certification then going to look like, given the criticism that I just presented from the previous slide? And one of the key issues that we took as a starting point is that it must be based on science and ecology, not in some kind of industrial wishful thinking. And the chief architects of the Association for Ecological Forestry Certifications requirements are forest ecologists, although there was a lot of input from sociologists and, of course, forest economics as well. But we took as starting point the ecological necessity for biodiversity to be preserved and for climate sequestration of carbon sequestration in forests to increase over time. And this leads automatically to the requirement that clear cuts will have to be a rare exception and not a rule, that the 10% strict protection requirement is an ecological minimum. And this ecological minimum actually is quite low, and it's probably sufficient all the same if these other issues, continuous cover forestry and sufficient other rules, sufficient other details are successfully implemented in the actual commercial parts, the non-set-aside parts of the forest. And again, this is not the webinar where the scientific details of these issues can be presented. We don't have time for that today, but there is ample scientific evidence for the limits placed within AFC certification that I have presented in this slide. And these issues, these requirements that are here on this slide are the fundamentals of AFC's requirements, even if there is a lot of also social and economic requirements in addition to ecological ones. But these are the ones that will be probably the most debated, and above all also the ones that require the most attention from the forest owner's side, at least. So the Association for Ecological Forestry Certification was created by a consortium of NGOs and businesses, the four most important ones of which are the four in the picture here in the slide. Innofor from Finland, Silva, the Association of Continuous Cover Forestry Forest Owners in Finland, Blockhugget, a forestry consultancy in Sweden similar to Innofor, and Pysimetsä-yhdistys, an organization similar to Silva operating in Estonia. But in addition to these, a great number of individual scientists and organizations have been consulted in all three countries during the process of creating the AFC forestry standard. State of the art at the current time is that the AFC was launched in the European Union Parliament on the 24th of September, so about 2 months ago. The AFC closely follows the European Union recommendations on closer to nature forestry. That's a document you can easily find on the internet, closer to nature forestry recommendations of the EU. And they're very similar to the AFC requirements. So as you can imagine, the Commission speaker was indeed delighted that such a certification system has come onto the market. The global AFC certification principles, called regulations, can be accessed online at the AFC's website. The national standards for the first 3 pilot countries will be online in the next few weeks. And although because of the origin of the AFC, it's currently initially Nordic focused, already there are negotiations with several Central European countries initiating to expand the national level standards into new European Union countries within the next 12 to 24 months. And AFC, of course, has global aspirations, and in time we hope to cover as many countries of the world as possible. Generic standards will be applied where national standards are not yet approved. So if you need to get EverCover timber or you want to get certified as a forest owner, this will be possible even if there is not yet a national standard approved for your country. The AFC now is a global office. It was opened in Tampere last month in Finland. So there is already full services available for businesses and forest owners wishing to get certified or to acquire EverCover timber. And I will be detailing in the next couple of minutes what kind of AFC certified timber is available and how are they defined. The 2 key terms here being matching timber and direct timber. I will be following up on that in just a moment. And one thing that I would advertise already at this stage to those of you thinking about acquiring EverCover, that to businesses that do purchase EverCover timber, matching timber during the course of the next 12 months, there is a free first audit during the phase-in of the certification system. So as I already noted, AFC certified timber is called EverCover. And if we talk about AFC certified EverCover direct timber, that is, as it implies, that it comes straight to your construction site or to your factory from AFC certified wood producers. And this will require extending the AFC chain of custody framework to more sawmills and CLT manufacturers so that such direct timber can in fact be delivered. For the time being, direct timber is available only in very local and smaller quantities. But this will change, and the target is to make as much direct timber available to customers in the future as possible. Product may be labeled as EverCover if at least 70% of its timber is EverCover. And buying a batch of EverCover timber also buys you the right to label your products made from that batch as EverCover timber. So you buy the trademark rights when you buy the timber. And of course, an important aspect of this process is that the source is traceable and it's also visitable. So uniquely among certification systems, the buyer may make an application through the group certifier to actually visit the source of the timber and see for themselves with their customers or with their employees what an EverCover forest looks like, and see for themselves just how immensely different it is in its approach from current timber production, and see for themselves why it protects biodiversity, why it improves carbon uptake, and why local people in the area are very, very much in favor of the AFC over other systems of certification or forest management generally. If you buy matching timber, this is similar in character to green electricity. That's the analogy. Doesn't have anything to do with electricity, but the idea being that if you buy a cubic meter of AFC certified saw timber EverCover, a similar amount or more is logged for every cubic meter that your project buys. But that entails that the timber arriving to your factory or to your construction site is not necessarily going to be the exact timber that was logged. However, all the other issues that I noted about direct timber in the previous slide apply also to matching timber. The source of the actual AFC timber is visitable, and you can request to go and see the result yourself. So in effect, your purchase of matching timber has exactly the same effect in the environment as the direct timber would have. And the reason this matching timber concept has been created is that it is an essential way of getting started before EverCover and the AFC have sufficiently large amounts of timber certified in enough countries to ensure more direct timber is possible to deliver. But I do stress that EverCover matching timber is available right away. We have already got forest owners signed up to the system and who are willing to sell their timber at very short notice if that is what the customers wish to acquire. So the other question that I want to address today is the issue of chain of custody. So first of all, what is chain of custody? In a nutshell, it's making sure that not more EverCover labeled products are marketed than is physically possible from the amount of timber that enters the market from the forest. So it's a mass balance above all. And the key issue here is that if you buy EverCover but don't use the trademark or make any EverCover related claims, well, then you don't need to join the chain of custody. It's conceivable that somebody would do this as a private, for their own private satisfaction, without necessarily wanting to use the EverCover trademark, but that, of course, is not assumed. On the contrary, if you do use the EverCover trademark or make claims, you have the right to do so. But in that case, you need to join the chain of custody, which essentially is an audit that checks that all the products that are labeled or have been labeled with the EverCover brand or the claims that are made according to the EverCover brand are in fact accurate with the amount of timber that has been logged in the original forest. And so in the case of matching timber, it's largely a mass balance check. In the case of direct timber, it's also a storage check along the way, that in the sawmills and similar higher degree manufacturing processing units, that the timber has been kept separate from the rest of the timber that is processed there. That's in a nutshell. In the practicalities, you don't have to be an expert on EverCover chain of custody. All companies that use EverCover timber are assigned an administrator, usually a group certifier such as my company Innofor, Blockhuget in Sweden, or other accredited companies that are in the pipeline. And they help and school in all the procedures and are ultimately responsible for making sure that the chain of custody requirements are fulfilled. The key issue is that you yourself keep track of the products you sell as EverCover. So it's a sort of extra marker in your bookkeeping. The AFC also has its own registry for keeping track of these issues. And there are also social requirements within the EverCover or the AFC certification system. So it's not exclusively a mass balance issue, but you also need to, for example, to demonstrate that your working facilities are safe for your workers. So there are social requirements, and these are largely audited as a one-off at the first time of EverCover usage. So the first audit is slightly more thorough than subsequent ones, as long as there are no major changes to your products or your business. And we are working hard to ensure that smaller manufacturing units that use EverCover only sporadically, or that use it only to a limited amount, will be audited with simplified procedures, which will keep costs down, keep bureaucracy down. And this is a work in progress, but we do want to make acquiring EverCover matching timber the threshold for that as low as possible, and to make usage of the timber as possible for as small, with a small amount of work as is only possible to arrange, while still, of course, arranging for creditable and auditing to make sure that all the key AFC auditing requirements are fulfilled. So in summary, I want to again just note that the AFC was created to answer the need for a genuinely sustainable system of forest use, the basis of which is an ecological science. The earlier certification paradigm of things being ecological, socially, and economically sustainable all at once sounds very nice, but in fact, if something is not ecologically sustainable in the long term, it cannot be sustainable in any other way. So the AFC's starting point was ecological sustainability, and then working social and economic sustainability into that limit to the maximum that natural processes allow. The AFC certified timber trades as EverCover, so this is an important distinction to understand, that the timber that you receive from AFC certified forests is called EverCover. And the AFC is the background organization that works with forest owners and works with the certification system itself, and accredits businesses such as Innofor and Blockhuget, and in future many others, to act on its behalf for forest owners and for businesses to apply the AFC's certification criteria. EverCover timber is available immediately as matching timber, and that matching timber uses a mass balance principle, so that for every cubic meter of saw timber that you have ordered, at least the same amount is logged in an AFC certified forest. And that in turn is the key motivation, of course, to owners when they get these orders to continue in the system. We're keeping the chain of custody for businesses will be kept as light as possible. The core elements being a mass balance check and worker safety. It's of course not quite as simple as that, but we are really working hard to keep these elements of, if you like, security in the system as little bureaucratic as is only possible. And similarly, also in terms of time and costs to the industry. So that actually completes my own part of this. Obviously, this presentation only skims the surface, but as I noted earlier, if you join the chain of custody through ordering EverCover and using its trademarks, you will be assigned a accredited business that will be responsible for going through the chain of custody and auditing procedures with you and making sure that you get by lightly in terms of extra work, and also that you fulfill all the criteria well in advance of any audits taking place. And with that, I am happy to hand over to Johan Berhin, who will give us some experience of marketing options and possibilities of EverCover. Johan, over to you.
Thank you, Marcus. And it's so wonderful, really, to be able to work this internationally and together with you. I will just share my screen and then also show how we have started on the Swedish side and how also companies are starting to market and starting to buy and joining this circle. So talking about communication and marketing benefits and well, a good feeling in your stomach benefits, I think, for the companies and townships working in this new chain. So my own background is from the furniture industry. I started Green Furniture Concept almost 20 years ago with this model that you may have seen out there, and a green ambition. So I really wanted to show the furniture business that it's possible to make something sustainable and functional and beautiful, and to really make a statement like that. But when I moved along and learned more about how timber is produced today, I was kind of shocked, and that is how I got in contact with Plockhugget in Sweden, that had started and set up their own standard and set up their own methods and ways of working timber in a whole other way, like Marcus just described, the same kind of way. That then led to the initiative together with Innofor and the other organizations starting AFC. So just like people didn't think it was possible to make something nice in a public location like this, using wood and having that in a way that could persist in this environment. Green furniture environments often looked like this. The place where green furniture came in, using metal to cope with the high wear and tear of such a place. And that is what green furniture has challenged and changed places with natural materials like wood to something like this. And really, I think, to me, also EverCover and the change of the wood industry and how wood is produced is the same kind of challenge. People didn't think it was possible to do something different than this. And now these organizations and forestry with closer to nature forestry have proven that to be possible, to have a continuous cover, to have also good economy in taking timber from a continuous forest and playing together with nature. And there is such a strong communication and gut feeling in that I want to transfer to you here. You can really see the smile on the other Marcus. This is Marcus Plokowit's face. When the forest behind him has given the logs that he's standing in front of there. So that forest has newly been harvested according to Plockhugget and EverCover standards, and it's still standing, as you can see, and it still gives good timber. And Plockhugget as a company has developed methods of doing this and are offering services to help landowners, forest owners, forest companies to do this closer to nature forestry in a good way. And Plockhugget launched their own standard in 2019, and that is now transferring over to EverCover. That has been an input to EverCover, and EverCover has taken that further, making a more complete standard to also cover, for example, social aspects. So that is the development. The Plockhugget standard is still there, but it's transferring over to EverCover. And Plockhugget is working with both standards for the moment and will continue with EverCover. So transferring to forests like this, like Marcus described. And why are people doing this? Why are cities, companies transferring, and what is their motivation and their message? And I think quite a simple, straightforward message that I got the other day from actually talking to the city of Gävle in middle east of Sweden. We have environmental goals to reach. So there are not, we have to do what's ever possible to get down to net zero. And we're going there by 2030, and that's very soon. So this is going over to closer to nature forestry is a very powerful way of reaching climate goals. And that's as simple as that can be. And the city of Malmö have shown that and taken action on that. So by their own facilities, schools, preschools, elder care, culture and sports facilities, since May this year, they have a requirement to firstly use reused wood, and secondly, if reused is not available, use closer to nature wood. First of direct timber, or second as matching timber. And final there. No forest will be felled to build schools and preschools in Malmö anymore. And that's kind of strong, I think. And really, I think that their decision came from their own pride. So they are constructing in wood. They want that to have the highest possible standard, and looked at the possibilities of doing that. Saw that there is timber coming out to the market according to closer to nature standards, and that way they could make that demand. Also checking how much more would it cost, and they assessed that with the current rather low building pace, it was cost them around 1 million Swedish crowns. That's 100,000 euros roughly a year to shift completely over to closer to nature wood by their own facilities, which is peanuts in the circumstance. And like that, they have made a really strong, they've set a really strong standard on the market that others are now starting to follow. And Stockholm and Climate Arena Stockholm are looking at how they will implement this with the cities around and townships around Stockholm, in the region of Stockholm. The city of Stockholm has already or are putting it into demands at Norra Djurgårdsstaden, a new part of town that is being built that will have this requirement as well. And I was talking about pride, and I will show you an example of that as well from a commercial facility then. And this is in Gothenburg at Masthuggskajen, central Gothenburg, or along the ocean, or from the river going out to the ocean. And they are marketing their facility like this. This is the first site on the first page of their homepage with the forest. It's a wood facility. It's a wood office. Looks like this, 9 stories high. And they're really setting nature and the wood first, showing it clearly inside on the facade. And they want to do this with pride. And they're null CO2 certified. It's zero carbon certification of Green Building Standard, Swedish Green Building Council. And when they were then to do the climate balancing, the last climate balancing of that to reach zero, they chose certificates of closer to nature forestry. So closely linking with matching timber their wood use to a forest that is traceable, that they got the trace of, the location of, and where they put up a QR code in their entrance and images of that exact forest to show what this facility has contributed to. So really using wood with pride, and under the null CO2 certification, they can also account for the climate carbon capture of closer to nature forestry. So it's in the system of null CO2. And at least in Sweden, there is a lot of talk about what's happening in the forest. Is it possible to do something different? And it's a quite vivid debate. And I think that it's now shown. Also, the NGOs of Sweden have also seen that, well, we need to build in wood to reach climate targets. So we need to do some kind of forestry. We can't protect everything. And if we're then using wood, it should be used closer to nature. So with the support of the NGOs, this opinion is shifting, and also the industry sees a possibility of doing something different, looking at the construction industry in particular. And to give you some examples that also are international, this talk has been picked up by Nestlé, that are now banning northern Sweden out of paper pulp. Nestlé may not have been the best ecological company on earth, but they are now trying to improve and do better. And at least they have seen this issue and seen that it's possible to do something different. They are shifting only from the north, but to as the clear cuts are the largest and the areas are biggest there. But once the industry see this possibility, they will also turn to something good and genuinely good. You could also look at publicity and the public opinion from a fear perspective and not wanting to get into that kind of press. And to show you an example of how IKEA were highlighted in the international press as somebody doing something very bad. And yes, It's not a good way of forestry. But it's, as Marcus showed, this is how forestry is mainly being done. And IKEA was picked out because they're a big actor. I think that this will also increase. And when using a lot of wood, especially the large actors of using wood, risk getting into the news when contributing to deforestation like this. So closer to nature forestry is really a way of not getting there and to getting good publicity instead. And I will show you a couple of examples also of how smaller companies with really genuine products and where the wood and the natural way of doing things is close to their core values. Genuine products that also genuinely want to do good. And first out is the furniture company of Soma Design in Sweden, who was one of the first companies picking up closer to nature forestry with a mass balance through Plockhugget, and who actually even put a little label with a QR code linking to where the forest, where the wood comes from. So proudly telling the story of how this has been produced and that the forest is still standing. And the kitchen manufacturer of Snäck, northern Sweden, the very north of Sweden, solid wood products with pride, and it's so natural to them that closer to nature forestry as it exists, they should, of course, use it. So in a mass balance, all they do, everything, all the kitchens from there, closer to nature forestry, and it's something they are talking about and showing, and it's showing their genuinity and their good ambitions. And the last example of Nordgröna, also that in Sweden, southern Sweden, making here wood panels. They produce sound absorbing natural, also natural products like moss on the wall. I think that's where you may have seen them before. But now also with closer to nature forestry wood, direct timber here. This is directly from a small sawmill in Småland, Sweden. And they are actually then using the diversity that comes out of a closer to nature forest. So showing and using the many types of timber, the many species from that biodiverse forest. So really telling the story of the closer to nature forest and using this type of panel on a facility where the frame and the core and the construction is made of closer to nature timber, there this panel can communicate that and be the face of the forest and exemplifying how that has been done. So with a lot of pride and really showing what's out there, telling that story. And I think that story is such a nice story to tell, and such it's contributing in so many ways, in climate ways, in biodiversity ways, and as a state-of-the-art material use. That possibility should be grasped, really, and can be grasped and talked about and spread. And as it's spread, like the example of Malmö, city of Malmö, it is also being taken up by other actors, seeing that this is possible and this is the way forward, working with nature. So getting to a forest like this, a nature that is nice to be in, that also captures a lot more carbon and that holds a lot more life and diversity. This is where we're heading, and I hope you want to be part of that journey. And I think you should feel as wood users how important that is, what you are doing and what your choice is leading to. It really affects both the actual amount of timber that you use, but also when you communicate it, it affects companies around you, customers around you, and it pushes and drives a new movement. And that is really a movement that I wanted to be part of when I joined Plockhugget. And I'm so happy that you are interested in being part of that as well. So I will finish there, and I will be happy to have a discussion now afterwards. Looking at let's see what you have in terms of questions. If you haven't written them yet, please do. And let's get a dialogue going. It'd be really nice to hear your thoughts of wood use.
Thank you so much, Johan, for that. We don't actually currently have any questions on the board. I think we seem to have been so mesmerizingly impressive, both of us, that we've kind of emptied the question load. But I do want to emphasize to all the listeners that our doors in the AFC are open to all kinds of wood users. Johan's background explains why many of his examples are from the mechanical advanced wood using sector, which is a natural user of EverCover, but we have also had inquiries from the paper and pulp and printing sector. And I really want to stress that this is a timber certification system for absolutely everyone in the industry. Continuous cover forestry is now used on peat soils all over Finland, including by the paper and pulp sector itself, and there's only a fairly short step from using continuous cover forestry on peat soils to using it also on mineral soils. So the experience of the big industry of how to carry out continuous cover forestry is increasing all the time, also for very big forest owners, the paper and pulp industry itself. And as their experience increases, I'm quite sure that the step from continuous cover forestry to getting certified with the AFC, that small step will be carried out without any difficulty to the industry itself. And I look forward to being part of that arrangement. We have a question
should we
here.
talk? Yeah, should we talk about availability? There is Aurora of Oslo have a question about availability of direct timber in 2027.
I think that direct timber will always follow behind matching timber, in the sense that when a country starts up with a new national certificate, the first forest owners that are signed up to the AFC are likely in all probability to be too far away from a certified sawmill for direct timber to be feasible. Whereas there's a gap between the initialization of the AFC in any particular country and the availability of direct timber instead of matching timber. But one of the key targets of us all in the core part of the AFC is, of course, to increase the amount of direct timber available as quickly as possible, and that is largely dependent on how quickly we find cooperating sawmills, CLT manufacturers, and similar important go-betweens between the raw timber from the forest and the finished product on a building site or a construction site. How long is the time gap? It can be months, it can be a year. It very much depends on how negotiations go with different sawmills around the AFC certified countries. So it's impossible at the current time to put any kind of time limit or day, month, week estimate on that. But I can say that at least here in Finland, and I know that's true in Sweden, negotiations with several sawmills are already ongoing. So it can be a question of only a few months at the very minimum. But
Yeah.
again, it depends how close the sawmill is to the actual purchaser of the final product, because obviously the transport costs must be kept to a reasonable level. So you need to have a fairly dense network of cooperating sawmills for
Yeah.
reasonably priced
Yeah, I can
to be
fill
delivered.
in. Yeah, I could fill in from Sweden. So there is a small sawmill, as you described, Marcus. This is on a local level. It is possible to get direct timber. Um, it's it's in the process of being EverCover certified. It's currently CoC certified, but it can turn over also with the demand. When you demand EverCover, this will happen. And also close to that smaller sawmill, there is a larger one, Ingarps Trävaror, which is a fairly large sawmill that are currently shifting part of their production to have a mass balance through the sawmill only. So it's sort of a mix between the matching timber and the direct timber. So you have a traceable source to the sawmill and a mass balance through the sawmill, and then part of the chain of custody after the sawmill as well. So we'll need to. There is not a word for that in the system yet, but it's a partly direct or semi-direct timber. If you want. And they will have next year a capacity of 8,000 cubic meters of closer to nature forestry. So that's a fairly large amount. You could compare that with it would be enough for 4 of these 9 stories high buildings that I showed in Gothenburg. That one used 2,000 cubic meters. That is, of course, CLT, that is cross-laminate frame that is used there, and it hasn't reached that far yet. So the sawmill of Ingarps is making sawwood. This type of mass balance through the chain of custody could also be applied then to a CLT factory. But this is under development now, and being more and more closer and closer to the source and to the full direct timber.
Thank you, Johan. I was in discussion with many architects recently at a Building Green trade fair about timber, and one thing that came out many times was that when the timber for a construction, whether it's furniture, whether it's a building of some kind, when it arrives at the factory or at the construction site, from then on there are very stringent requirements with regard to how much carbon is preserved in the timber, insulation factors for the building, how to reuse the wood once the building's natural life is over, and so on. So there's a large body of sustainability with regard to how the construction is made as carbon neutral as possible. But that the black hole is the source of the timber itself. So because current certification doesn't work very well in terms of carbon sequestration or ecological impact, in fact, many of the targets, for example, with regard to the amount of carbon emissions, greenhouse gas emissions that a new building's construction emits. So these targets have actually failed before the timber even reaches the construction site, if you calculate the impact of the clear cutting that produces that timber. So in fact, to start your sustainability calculations from the moment that the timber arrives at your construction site is in fact to close your eyes to reality. So your impact has already been very great, but that isn't actually calculated in the life and impact of the building. So this is clearly, and more architects are aware of this, as you yourself brought up in your presentation, and they feel powerless to do anything about it. But now the AFC, of course, offers the possibility to plug that sustainability gap and to take control of the entire project from the forest all the way to the finished product. What do we think about the availability of direct timber in Sweden and Finland a few years from now? I think in a couple of years that direct timber will be very widely available, certainly saw timber, and I do hope that CLT also will be available, and of course in the case of CLTs the actual delivery distance is less critical than it would be for just saw timber on its own. What we do need is a pretty comprehensive network of sawmills taking part, and we're working towards that as quickly as we can.
Yeah, and I think a good remark on this could be that what you are used to on the market of FSC and PEFC is not traceable as the direct timber is. So there is a mass balance involved in the general FSC and PEFC wood, just like as I described, the semi-direct timber here. So they're always sold together. They're as timber with FSC marking or PEFC marking, but that is part of a mass balance through the chain as well. There is a chain of custody, but there is a mass balance through each step, like I described with the sawmill, and that would be also that to start with, at least in the CLT factories. So that kind of semi-direct timber is the traceability and the chain of custody that you are used to, and that is on the market now. If you go to full direct timber, that is something that kind of traceability and chain of custody is not there on the market. FSC has an FSC 100 standard for this that is almost fully traceable all the way, but that is hardly available on the market. So if you try to buy FSC 100, it's very hard to obtain. So just to know where we are on the chain of custody and traceability field, the direct timber will be a step further also on the traceability side, not only on the standard of logging and standard of the forest.
And of course, combinations of direct and matching timber are also possible solutions. And indeed, for the paper and pulp industry, for the larger actors, such mixes will, I think, for quite some time be absolutely essential if very large volumes of EverCover timber are involved, and that will just probably have to be accepted for quite some time. Whereas in construction industry, it's faster to move to 100% direct timber, much faster. Certainly, in some areas. One question that has come to us from Central Europe fairly regularly is the issue of, well, I mean, we already do continuous cover forestry in many parts of Central Europe. So, why do we have to have 10% strict protection and a lot of decaying dead wood and retention trees and so on? And the answer is that continuous cover forestry just on its own is although it's better than clear cutting, is not by any means sufficient to protect forest biodiversity. It's possibly more obvious if one applies that logic to something like a rainforest that has never been logged at all, and then you say, well, is it okay to take out half the timber from here and leave a few big trees? And most people would agree that would probably decrease the biodiversity a great deal, and they would be absolutely right. So natural forests have up to 50% of their standing and lying timber volume in total is either decaying or dying at various stages, and some of the tree trunks involved are very large indeed. And such conditions simply cannot be accepted in a commercial forest. It's not possible to operate in such conditions, and nor should it be necessary. So there is a distinction to be made between set aside, where natural conditions completely prevail, and continuous cover forestry. That there is only so much that any form of commercial forest management can achieve, but it can achieve a lot as a buffer zone. So even quite small protected areas retain their natural features if they're surrounded by continuous cover forestry. So the light and wind and water table conditions don't change if the surrounding areas of protected areas are not clear cut. And that's very important. So the effect of continuous cover forestry is indirect as well as direct for nature protection, but the set aside requirement of 10% minimum and indeed not logging high conservation value forests at all, those that remain, that is an absolute requirement of the AFC standard for biological reasons. But this has been investigated in ecology extensively, but this particular webinar is not about forest ecology, but the science behind these requirements is well established and it is sound.
Yes, very good. And I'd like to add a comment of availability as well. The demands and the openness of demand is very important here. So when you put demands on the market, this will make the industry react, and that's something that the industry and we as actors can plan with. So if we know that there is a demand coming, or that has been set a demand, and this is the progress of the timber need there, we'll be able to meet that. And the sooner you can put the demand clear to the market, the faster this will happen. So it really, your communication of now this will happen, now it just happened, now this is the kind of ramp up scenario that we would like. If you communicate that, we will be able to deliver to that. Let's say we have from Plockhugget's side with a 12-month advance, we could have 100,000 cubic meters available, and like that, I think really foresee a lot of the demands of the townships that I just showed, and also from you in Oslo, Aurora, and it's a matter of knowing it with some advance, then we can reach high volume. So your communication is really important, and that makes the shift.
Right, thank you, Johan. And I want to close, the questions have been about direct timber here, and I want to close for my part by noting that if there is a steady demand for matching timber from a particular source, a particular client, so that gives us immediately the opportunity to focus our direct timber efforts in that area. So if we have a client that is buying matching timber at a regular pace and has a steady demand, then of course we will move to direct move our efforts to sourcing direct timber in that area, so as to ensure that customer as much direct timber in future as possible. So your demand as clients will undoubtedly affect also the pace at which direct timber and the time and place that direct timber can be achieved. And if you
Yes.
are interested in acquiring EverCover timber, please do be in touch with Innofor or CoC in Finland or Sweden for an offer.
Exactly. Thank you, Marcus. It's been really nice meeting you all, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you take this forward and how it will be put on the market together with you. And
Exactly.
I will put my and do as well, Marcus. I will put my email in the chat, and if you put yours too, Marcus, we'd be happy to answer your questions also afterwards and follow up after this.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you all. With these words, we are on schedule, and thank you everybody for your interest, and do wish you well with your timber projects, whatever and wherever they may be, and look forward to having some further discussions with you in the future. Do please look for updates from the AFC about the latest news about EverCover developments. From my part and from Finland, thank you to all listeners and to you, Johan, and hope to be in touch again with you all soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.